Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I believe that we are here this afternoon because of the sense award and time. So please, you're coming here to be rewarded. Well, to give a and I like the spirit Papa is approaching.
Please let us pray. Our Lord and our God, we thank you for giving us another day. We thank you for our dear university and for the creation of our research unit, the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Consultancy. We thank you for what you have been able to help this unit to achieve over the years. We thank you for the successful organization of the previous award ceremony and for giving us another opportunity to have a second one. We invite you to be present and to lead us as we go through this program so that through your guidance we'll be able to have a very successful program. We want to begin in the name of the
Shall we welcome from the
Thank you very much, program, and to perform this organization. Diploma in education in 19 science education University of Cape Coast. Ladies for Center for Research and Quality of Primary Education between 2006 and 2010. From 2008 to 2010, he served as Head of Department, Science and Math Education. He became the Dean of the Faculty of Education from 2010 to 2014. He acted as a Provost from 2012 and acting Provost of the College of Education Studies in 2016. On the international frontiers, our chairperson was a visiting research fellow at the University of Education, UK in 2003 and 2005. He was a visiting professor at the Center of Studies of International Cooperation in Education in Japan in 2006 and fellow research in the same university in 2007 and 2009. In fact, his CV is so, the depth of his CV is so deep and the breadth is so wide. He was a famous overseas scholar in University, China in 2012. Also, in 2012, he was Australian Leadership Award Fellow at the University of Australia. He was an international graduate and
We will now to address from our Thank you very much. Obvious that I'm accepted to change. And then secondly, I have to welcome everyone. Savannah, Professor in Anxiety, Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor George H. Drew, Registrar, Mr. Sophia, Provost, Deans, Directors, and other duty bearers of the University of Cape Coast. Colleagues from other tertiary institutions here present, representatives of government ministries, departments and agencies, representatives from Danida, faculty and students, distinguished invited guests, colleagues from the media, ladies and gentlemen. I take a singular honor as the Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast to welcome you to the second Research Awards and Grants Ceremony. In line with the 9 Sustainable Development Goals, the University of Cape Coast is determined to contribute its quota in helping Ghana respond to the call to increase its share of research and development expenditure as a proportion of gross domestic product and minimize the significant gap between the cost of researchers in full-time equivalent and per million inhabitants. The University of Cape Coast has been well positioned to carry along reduced global targets, giving the priority place on research since the establishment of the university in 1962, and including office research activities through the development of the research agenda for the period 2012 to 2017, and the establishment of the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Consultancy called DRIP. Research, as we are all aware, is one of the 3 core mandates of a university, as it constitutes the building blocks of socio-economic transformation and development of every nation and across the globe in advancing the frontiers of knowledge. In recognition of this, the University of Cape Coast has been committed to research, as evidenced in the numerous research activities undertaken and being undertaken by faculty of the university. In spite of the numerous researches that have been undertaken by research, the research findings have been cited as one of the increasing local, national, and global challenges. This engendered the need to refocus research activities in the University of Cape Coast to, among other responsibilities, come the capacity endowed in the university, build a track record of research portfolio for the university, that's to offer. The Research Awards and Grants Ceremony presents one of such platforms that will help achieve these objectives. The 2-pronged interventions, that is Best Research Awards and Research Grants, research relevance of research and industries and gentlemen. In our efforts in those respects, started modestly with a sum of 100,000 Ghana cedis for the maiden event, which was held last year. And it is anticipated that our financial commitment in this regard will continue to grow. This year, the university committed 500,000 Ghana cedis to the Best Research Awards and Research grants. Financial commitment to this scheme will continue to increases as we identify other cost-cutting interventions in the university to increase the research portfolio. I have charged the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Consultancy to develop other research funding models to complement the existing core, which is based on the university research agenda, as well as national and international development and such as illegal mining and disaster outbreaks, which continue to remain a menace in Ghana. In the broader scheme of our financial commitment to research, I wish to mention that the university has increased its share of research expenditure from 0.67% to 1.01% in the last 3 years. It is my expectation to further resource grid with both human and logistical resources to equip it to deliver on its mandate. I am particularly delighted to have my senior colleague, Professor Aiti, accepting our invitation to share with us his research experience and how he has made the progress that has been achieved by our colleagues in the University of Ghana. Also, the presence of external participants, particularly representatives from government, ministries, departments, and agencies, attests to the underlying goal of ensuring that research conducted by faculty of the University of Cape Town research knowledge, advance aspects for sustainable development. To continue using their quota, also find invited guests for making time the university's continuous support for research to carve a niche for the university in the area of research. With these remarks, I say that I have accepted to chair this function and you will cooperate with me to make this program a success. Thank you. Shall we once again applaud our chairperson for the afternoon? I will now call on the Director of GRIC, Professor S.K. Enin, to tell us about the processes, outcomes, and expectations of both RSG and DRA. Shall we welcome Professor Enin?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Chair, with your permission, let me skip the necessary protocol and move on to why we are here. Ladies and gentlemen, this part of the ceremony is extremely important. We should engage for transparency throughout the process and to encourage colleagues to further participate in the program. So we thought of the need to have a section on the program that deals with processes that we went through the processes that we went through, the outcomes thereafter, and the expectations that we want as a directorate and for that matter, the university. As was indicated in the Vice Chancellor's speech, this is the second session of this research awards and grant ceremony, and we are happy to put on record that the experience this time around is very much different from the first experience. What are the reasons? For two grants awards. In terms of the participation, we've seen an increase in the number of colleagues who have shown interest and the diversity of research-focused areas that we've seen. So on record for the premier event, we had 24 colleagues in the university, out of which, as was indicated earlier, 100,000 was shared for that ceremony, which means that as a university, the maximum amount that a colleague received as at last year was 20,000 for 3 of them, and the other 3 receiving 15,000. This time around, again, as was indicated by the Vice Chancellor, 500,000 Ghana awards and grant ceremony. We had 62 applying for it. What makes this event slightly different from last experience, the number of, as I said, is the approach by which the current Vice Chancellor the individual the focus was that it should be at the faculty level, but rather within the faculty, let's encourage interdepartmental research. The third level had to do with the interdepartmental, where we're encouraging colleagues to go beyond the faculty and really do research that cuts across faculties and, if possible, cutting across colleges. And the fourth level was to get us to respond to our mandate. So the fourth level had to do with the policy and practice component. The 62 applications that we received was decomposed in the following order. We had 5 applications for the individual led, but we had earmarked 3 applications for each. So we put on offer 15 individual led group led, which which was very encouraging for us because the university, to align with the benefits associated with was at the college level, and we see 24 applications. We get 2 for the university, which means that we receive application in here. 62 applications for the 7 were offered, the applications that we received. That was clearly. So who is reading what they are doing? Possible pick up similarly. That researchers have engaged. We appreciate the limitations and for investing about research intensity and visibility, we decided to spread gradually. For which reason we resorted to the Google Scholar approach. Why did what informed last November we did a report for Central Administration on the number of colleagues that have Google Scholar. Our 173 on Google Scholar. So we thought of the need to better the and that is what we hope to thread that. The second dimension that we define disability is engagement. The number of times you've been invited as a researcher to give a keynote address, the number of times you've been invited as a researcher to be part of a national policy agenda. So we look at the disability was based on the national. So we're looking at, you are out there doing research in the University of Cape Coast, but what is making you go out there? Are you doing research with people that are in other disciplines that will help raise the university, the image of others? And the dimension had to do with your engagement with international researchers. So you are striking a intent we all share with me. It's a challenge in terms of putting weight on these dimensions as far as disability is concerned. When we put out the application for last year, we got 19 of our colleagues applying for it. This time around, we got 27 of our colleagues applying for it, indicating that also in the context of research award, we've seen an increment in that regard. Out of that, again, the novelty was that let's focus on best and the best evolving and also target college level research. So we had 2 offers at the best evolved, and this was targeting colleagues that have been in the system for 6 years and 12 years, and the best evolving was targeting colleagues in the system 6 years. 10, 8, and 6 for these respective awards, and out of that, 7 of our colleagues were successful in that regard. The Director of Group in consultation with Management Committee and Provost nominated subject specialists to review the application. And one of the special is got a second opinion from a company. Put all these assessments together and then present it back to the Group Management Committee to review the assessment. In our case, a transparent approach and a free and fair approach. But we all agree that with every assessment, it's a learning process, and as you move on, you need to take lessons there. How we thought about doing that was to engage with both the successful and the unsuccessful applicants after the assessment process. And I must admit that we've learned a number of lessons. One of them is that we need to rethink the sole use of internal assessment. The reason being that the differences in departments a significant number of subject specialists in a respective department. So with those subject matters, we have to refer for an external review. So these and other learning lessons are what we're going to bring on board if we have the opportunity to roll out the 3rd Research Support Grants and Research Awards ceremony. What do we expect thereafter? Here, let me share with you a presentation Sorry, it's a bit late. Let me share with you a presentation that the university just had from a rep, that is the accounts manager from Elsevier. When the special came asked, why are we doing this? And I said, before I tell you the main reason, let me mention to you the undocumented reason. And the undocumented reason is that we need to calculate. University of Manchester within the country, and when the director was visited, visits were made to University of Cape Town and University of Stellenbosch, which are benchmark institutions in the region. If you look at the slide that we have there, it's telling us that colleagues who are doing research in the last 5 years have managed to publish 804 publications in the last 5 years. Colleagues, on the surface of it, you wouldn't be in the position to argue whether this is good or otherwise. But if you compare this with what your benchmark institution is doing, which is University of Ghana that has published over 3,000the emphasis University of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah University of Technology, and the University of Cape Coast. Again, my apologies for the glare picture. This is because it's being copied from another slide. The top the top is Ghana, and the second one is for Kwame Nkrumah University of and colleagues. University of Cape Coast on this slide is coming third, but in economics we will call it a vulnerable third position. In the sense that over the period, our position has been either third or sixth. It's just until recently that we're beginning to see some marginal increase over the other universities. What is critical here is how do we get closer or bridge the gap? It is for this reason that we go back and I present the story again on Google Scholar and why we started with Google Scholar. Vice Chancellor, this time around, I'm happy to mention that with the recent analysis that we've done on colleagues' presence on Google Scholar, our representation has increased from 173 colleagues being on Google Scholar to 284, indicating that about over 100 of our colleagues over the last 5 months have joined on Google Scholar. So Google Scholar being there is one of the criteria, but the important question is how many of us are there? Again, Vice Chancellor, let me mention that for those who are on Google Scholar in November 2016, 9 of them had 0 citations, and when we compare it with the increase to 284, 12 of them have 0 citations, which indicates that although more people are getting there, the number of colleagues who are getting there. Another statistic that is worth noting is that our total citations for university was 15,600. Ladies and gentlemen, this time around is increased up to 25,259. Again, it's an indication of increase, but what you need to look at again is the number of colleagues who have very high Google Scholar representation. And I must put on record that those who have more than 500 citations on Google Scholar over the 5-month period has also increased. So we appreciate the fact that you are looking at other avenues by which colleagues would understand what it takes to be visible. And we are hoping that since you've taken the step to invite the CBR to come and have a discussion on how to get colleagues to publish in index journals, we would follow up with actual action so that we wouldn't allow for time to take us by surprise. And again, I'm happy to mention that in your submission, you clearly indicated that you are committed to resourcing and recognizing the role of trade. Thank you very much.
How we do it better for Professor S.P. Ever eloquent to give you the opportunity to apply from 5 levels and then also similar on YouTube. I now have a singular honor and pleasure to invite Mr. Emmanuel Sebo Saki from Danida to give a message. Please let
Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I bring you very warm greetings from Her Excellency Toby Bengal, the Danish Ambassador to Ghana. And I thank you very much for this warm opportunity to share some thoughts on what you are doing. It actually feels very good to be back because 10 years ago, exactly this month, I left Lisbon. And it's good to be back and it's good to see some of the people who really helped in shaping my thoughts and vision in what I do right now. I Googled solidarity because I was asked to give a solidarity message. And for the first time, I realized that solidarity is not a word I'm very well acquainted with. And the synonyms that came up were exciting. For me to discuss and for the University of Denmark and by far the leader to engage with the University of Cape Coast. Then it's very important that we also consider adding the good to keep the pace, and it's good to increase risk, but it's also very important to link research to what the private sector needs. I was very excited to hear that you committed 500,000 cedis this year to the development and the encouragement of research among the fraternity of the University of Cape Coast. I would also want to suggest, from a private sector point of view, that it would be also very good to leverage some of these investments with profitability and economic enhancement of private sector interventions. Mr. Chairperson, development partners in Ghana have a common goal going forward. That if, for example, post-2020 will not be in Ghana, we are exiting from our aid relationship with Ghana to a more trade, facilitation, and commercial engagement. But that exit should not scare us. I think that exit presents an opportunity for institutions like the University of Ghana to tap into the resources and to fill in the gaps of partners that we have. Of the private sector program is supporting the business advocacy type, which is government, and then try to discuss to enhance the business enabling environment of our country. I think that in this regard, the University of Cape Coast and other institutions, like-minded institutions, can really become the bulwark that supports and continue with development partners' agenda that is facing us going forward. The world of the architecture and the world of development is changing, and it's changing rapidly. We are moving up to a self-help approach rather than previously where people and organizations kind of handed out gifts and incentives to engender the research and innovative agenda. It is very important, I would want to emphasize again, that the University of Cape Coast, which I know is very well placed, tries to engage, as we've been talking about a lot. I think that this country is there lies a lot of institutional systems like the University of Cape Coast of our quest to build that wanted to explore chickens to What am I saying? What I'm trying to say is that there are only with what international community is aspiring to get.
Thank you very much. Your 5 minutes of solidarity speech. well taken. It went beyond 5 minutes, but absolutely encouraging action. Pretty soon we'll start listening to the keynote address. But you agree with me that those of us who belong to the Orthodox faith, before the sermon is preached, the choir singing back for before our sermon comes. February 2003 to January 2010. As Vice Chancellor, Professor Aite served 2 terms. During his tenure, he set out to transform the University of Ghana into a world-class research institution and the #1 on the African continent. As at May 2016, the University of Ghana rose through the ranks to become the 7th best university in Africa and the best university in West Africa. This feat can be greatly attributed to the leadership qualities of Professor in institutions and their role in the development University, and what more. Professor Aite has served as an expert advisor to a number of major international commissions and working groups, member of the United Nations Millennium Development Goals Task Force on Growth and Poverty Reduction. He has also served in the capacity of the managing editor of the Journal of African Economics, member of the editorial board of Development Southern Africa, and African Economics in 1988. He is the chairman of the board of the United Nations University World Institute for Development Economics Research, Helsinki. In April 2016, Professor Aite was appointed to the Governing Council of the United Nations University. From August 2016, Professor Ernest Aite, Secretary General of the African Research Universities Alliance, ARUA. His current position demands him to drive a collaboration form intensive universities in Africa and train on the continent. And you can see the reason why he has become around. We welcome Professor Aite.
Mr. Vice Chancellor, Co-Vice Chancellor, Dean, students of the University, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you notice I said university of choice. One of your former Vice Chancellors was fond of the mind choice. Let me begin by thanking the Vice Chancellor for inviting me to this event. I'm very happy to be here as it signals to me the direction that the UCC wants to take in the future, and my full support for it. I like everything I've seen so far, and I like what I've heard so far in terms of where UCC wants to go in the years to come. I believe that one for faculty members and They will accuse you of causing them stress. They will accuse. But I tell you one thing, don't mind them. When the results come, when you begin climbing in the rankings, when the money starts flowing, they may or may not applaud you. I say they may or may not applaud you. A large number will applaud themselves. You know, at Lagos, when the going was tough, everywhere I went, all the demons. When things began going well, I saw we have plans. We sacrificed everything. The path that the UCC has decided to take. Development goals, which will transform Africa. African economies must grow faster and succeed. I can assure you of that without a solid knowledge economy that is going to give additional knowledge. We are not going to group to make it. In today's talk, I'm going to use some of the general characteristics of research universities, and I'm going to ask the question, and I'm trying to answer it when Africa needs it. These are primarily products of research by faculty and students. Like money is given by the government of Ghana. Do that. If you generate research and produce more these are the things that has changed. Of course, they are difficult to change. And of course, it means that you are going to tell colleagues that you can't supervise PhD students because we don't do research. Of course, as a result, the change that must take place in order for the university to do its work properly, individuals will have to research universities are generally less oriented towards undergraduate teaching, but can still provide excellent experience for students willing and able to explore. Somebody may ask, if there are so many hundreds of thousands of young people that require degrees, why should a university like UCC or UG or K University or whichever be focusing more and more on graduate students? The simple answer is this: the world has changed and Ghana has changed. When UCC began, there were only 3 universities in Ghana. Today, there are 10 public universities and there are over 86 private universities. So, it's not you cannot go to university. No, you can. There are still opportunities. It's for us to ensure that those private and other public universities are doing the right thing by improving how they do their training and so on. Learning based on research and hands-on experimentation. That's another characteristic of research universities. A lot of experimentation, a lot of willingness to find new ways of engaging with students. We've had the traditional ways of engaging with students. So the professor stands in front of the class and gives a talk, the students take notes and so on. Very little that is interactive around us. Today, there's a lot of information available to the whole world, including the students, not just the professor. So, research universities have provided ways in which your research is blended into the engagement with the students, because the students are part of the research you are doing. That's another way of looking into how these universities are functioning. A point I must make about the characteristics of these universities, that they are expensive. So you find around the world that in most countries, especially the developed countries, because they are expensive, they choose 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on the economy, universities out of the large number. These are the universities that we, as a government, want to make our research universities. They are going to provide the bulk of the knowledge that we need to transform our economy or achieve social progress. So these are the kind we have chosen. If you go to Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, most parts of the Eastern Europe, you will find that 3, 4 universities have been selected. What's the difference? They pump a lot of money into them. They need solid, new, expensive equipment for the sciences. There's no way you can have a university that is lacking in competitive equipment that is needed to do not simply Let me tell you a funny story. And then when I met the scientists, without exception, all they complained about was non-existent equipment and the fact that they couldn't do experiments, they couldn't do projects because they didn't have the equipment for it. They didn't have the equipment to teach the basic sciences, you know. And of course, because I didn't come from the sciences, they didn't expect even though the scientists had interest in the science, we want to buy everybody. I said to them, well, 2.5 years, you spent another $5 million to buy the equipment for them. And again, they were happy. So So the people from the arts came to see me and said, you know, you are spending much money. I can see that fix that I'm teaching you. You know, that is scratch your head and find a solution. It doesn't cost much to teach the humanities to share. It doesn't cost much. All they need is a laptop here, computer there, and you think they are building for them, they are happy. So when you go to Lagos, you see that while they are buying expensive equipment, the history building has been painted, the technology has been painted. You know, so that's how you run a university. Major feature of these. What it means in many of these universities is that a professor is somebody who has a fairly large grant for a project, and you involve so normally, whether in the US or Germany or the they work in Germany, a very well studied. The way the field programs are structured is like a master and his or her apprentices. So the master is there, and you are an apprentice. You work with him or her, and then after a while, you graduate. But the way it is structured is one that one has to be very careful about. So the bond between the professor and the students is a very important feature of good research universities. Of course, they offer more variety in the courses that are available. There's less teaching than prepared for research. There's the quality and evidence-based teaching, and then there's the global recognition and the world-class reputation. So, I'm saying all of these things to press home to you that what UCC seeks to achieve is important and doable, but calls for a lot of other hard. Does Africa need research universities? Yes, we do. We need it far more than any other region in the world, really, because we need the application of new knowledge far more than is required in other places. They are looking for new knowledge in order to go to Mars. We are looking for new knowledge in order to grow, in order to stop the children from dying, in order to stop mothers from dying and giving birth, in order to feed ourselves, in order to create employment and so on. These are things we need a new knowledge for. So, and there's enough evidence from economic research that shows that countries that do research are far more likely to grow faster than those that don't do research. And there's enough evidence of that. What we in Africa have not been able to do is get our governments to commit more and more to doing research. We, because we the researchers ourselves, have not been able to show or demonstrate that research can pay. That research that indeed pays. And that's one of the things I hope we'll be able to do with time. If research outputs for the last decade, how is it playing out? How does it affect the way Ghana looks at research? I have listened quite attentively to ministers of education, the president, vice president talk, and very seldom do they show But here, ways of doing it. Let me talk about the more difficult ways. The more difficult way let you do everything and simply by spending more money and then by putting pressure on the will happen. It could happen, right? It will cost you a lot more money than you need to spend, and it might take longer than you have time for. So that's one thing to be mindful of. What are the easier ways of doing that? The easier ways involve partnerships. Partnerships. And have a very strong belief in partnerships. I don't believe that Lagos could have done what they wanted. To go to the US, interested. And that number of the news talks about people have 3,000 and so on the database. Before the massive jump in 2011, before then, there are many units that were recognized as like most of them are assigned to the university. These have men and women, young men and women especially, who are willing to write grant applications for $8 million, $10 million. Yes, in essence, be competing with Lagos, you'll be competing with UCC about my new. So now I run the University of Ghana. We want to increase the number of public ascribed to African churches to 5% the next 10 years. That's what we want to do. We want to more than double the students. And we also put more than 70 access respect service and contribution to global development. That governments will see that there's something worth fighting for. So that's what we are doing. Currently, there are 16. There's certainly room for UCC to join in the near future if UCC goes the way it is currently going. If UCC goes that way and that's the hard work and make the sacrifices, there's every reason to believe that UCC can join this elite club. And that's what I'll be working for, and hope you also will try to. Structure a board that has lesser commitment. We have the Dr. Andrea
is Dr. Ernest Ted of Agric Engineering. Thank you very much, Dr. Ernest. Dr. Upon of the biochemistry is our next. Professor Joseph Benjamin. Congratulations, Professor Apple. We now move to the group-led category. Here we have as the PI, Dr. Sophie. The photograph. And then we have Dr. Ivan Autry and a solution of fisheries and aquatic sciences. Dr. Ivan Autry. The room is too quiet. The next on the day we have Dr. Mark Osu Amponsa and Professor Emmanuel Kosijima. The next we have Professor Kankam Webu, Dr. Bernard Yao, Dr. Joseph Tufokwati, Ms. Letitia Busu, Miss Magdalene Brown, Alhaji Dr. Mumuni Baba Gidana, Mr. Becker Kaluyana Abibu. Dr. Isaac Dazi, Dr. Desmond Omani Campbell, Dr. Prince Amu Abanye, Dr. Peter Apia Thompson, Dr. Frank Baden, Dr. Jeremy Mayer, Mr. Emmanuel Campbell, Mr. Colin Sesi Kote, Mr. Cyril Mauli Onumesa, Dr. Grace Amukwe, and Dr. Madison Adamisa. Thank you. We have the next Miss Anna Kefon Benjamin, Dr. Subriya Pua, Dr. Angela Gideon Kosu, Miss Ernestina Siedu, Mr. Abraham Fali Baby. You are from Matena and Charles. We have Professor Ezekiel Pokwa Britain, Dr. Angela Gideon Kosu, and Ms. Loretta Baby. They are from Setters. We have Dr. Kamara. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Professor Joseph Benjamin, Archibald Apple, Dr. Richmond Sadiq Ngula, Ms. Rita Tumesi, and I. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are done with the group-led. Thank you. Professor Ernest Kofi Davis, Dr. Mike Kodo Abre, Dr. Eric Anani, Dr. Christopher Yaupa. Thank you very much. This ends the interdepartmental category. We now move on to policy and practice. Dr. David Osayosi, Dr. Michael Koteledu, and Mr. Kinsley Nana Kotele. Dr. Alfred Deku Ampamesa, Dr. Michael Wachiyado, Dr. Francis Ansan, and Dr. Wisdom Agbebano. By Professor S.K. the microphone for him to speak to a document that has been given to Professor N.
Vice Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've just gone through the ceremony, but let me spend a couple of minutes to talk about the functional relevance of why we are here. As part of the committee, we have one was the program, the other was the research focus of the grantees that just received here. And this is what we mean by the functional relevance of what we are doing. Vice Chancellor, this is a platform, as I indicated, it touches on issues related to the marginal group. What is their sexual? Take your time and go. 4% of the issues are related to health, 30% are related to education, and the others, as I indicated earlier on, are related to issues in the area of agriculture, climate change, and livelihood strategies. So at this juncture, I would again entreat our colleagues from MDAs to network with our colleagues that have just received their awards. We provided our email address behind the booklet. If you are very much interested in one of them, please do not hesitate to get in touch. I'm going to put you into contact with the researchers. And as was indicated in the Vice Chancellor's speech, this is a platform to explore other alternative ways of funding, which in this context we're thinking about complementary funding. And as our colleague from Danida also said, we can always leverage on whatever amount that the University of Cape Coast sets aside for research. And that is what we mean by the functional relevance of this program. Permit me to move on to the next item, MC, which has to do with the presentations. Again, based on our earlier submissions, we said we have two-pronged intervention, that is the research awards and the research support grants. We've just gone through the research support grants, and this year what we have decided to do is to allow the winners of the research award. As you clearly heard the MC say, we have the winner and the runner-up for each of the categories, that is the best involved and the best evolving. So we are allowing 15 minutes for the two categories to present in their estimate papers. And based on my estimate, these are papers that again attract further research. I invite the presenter, Dr. Wilson, to treat us to and chromatic techniques.
I look at a brief introduction, the objective, the steps, just to make it clear to those of us who are listening to. I look at the key findings that I've gotten so far, conclusion and current trends. Now, cocoa is a major commodity for many African countries, and it's one of the backbone, one of the best cocoa in Africa. However, West Africa is a leading producer, and it contributes about 7% of cocoa. Half of the cocoa produced in Africa is exported to the world. And this demands that we look at quality. And quality therefore becomes a very important attribute in the cocoa industry. However, quality being developed, we wanted to look at how best we can reduce the time used for determining quality. Therefore, is NIR the solution and thermometric the solution? One will say yes, I will say yes. So my research, I just want you to read. NIR is one way of studying the interaction of light with matter, and thermometric is the application of mathematics and graphical methods to maximize chemical data to make it meaningful. So why NIR technology, and why is this technology so important for Africa? NIR technology brings us this advantage. One, it is not destructive, it involves low chemical usage, little time is required, decrease operation cost, and because it involves low chemical usage, it is environmental for applications. Currently, NIR can find itself in almost all the fields: in agriculture, in food, in pharmacy, in medical research, and also in other related fields. Now, my objective was to determine cocoa bean quality parameters by using NIR and thermometric. This will provide a very good platform for everybody to analyze cocoa bean quality wherever you find yourself. Now, let me take you through a simple step. The first step is to scan the cocoa. Bean. Then you determine the chemical parameters of interest, and then with thermometric you build a model. Now, in building the model, this is where the difficulty is. But if you take your time and build a model, you select a very good pre-treatment, because this spectra from the scan contains a lot of information, both useful information and redundant information. So, the sample when you take the first scan. So how do we get the important sample or important data out of this spectra? You apply thermometrics, and the thermometric you marry it with the wet chemistry analysis, and then you'll be able to train the thermometric data and relate it to the parameter of interest in the spectra. If you're able to identify this correlation, then you validate it. When you validate with one scan, you'll be able to application and also quantitative step in the thermometric world. Now, this key findings. I first scanned, let's say, all the cocoa samples in Ghana from different regions, and also all categories of cocoa samples were scanned. And with my thermometric and the organisms that I trained, I was able to cluster the cocoa beans into different clusters. We have fermented cocoa beans, unfermented, and partly fermented. So with this scan, you can get your cocoa bean clustered in a nice cluster, and this will be able to identify cocoa beans, and you'll be able to help fight fraud or falsification. Well, you'll be able to identify. Again, the same scan, if you take one spectrum, you'll be able to also identify fermentation index, which is one of the quality parameters when we want to measure cocoa bean. So the fermentation index can also be calculated. And if you look at the R bar, we have 0.98, which tells us that the model, when we train the model and use it on cocoa beans, it was working for us in this experiment. Again, here we also look at cocoa powder to see if you are going to take cocoa powder with other beans that is not from Ghana or that is not fermented. Well, we're able to categorize and find good solution to that. Again, I applied a lot of mathematical models, and I was able to get a good spectral behavior. And with this, I use what we call the direct orthogonal signal correction, and I was able to signal that. Now, In summary, if you look at this spectrum again, one spectrum, with one spectrum, you'll be able to identify a quality parameter of interest. You'll be able to classify the parameter of interest. For instance, from this research, we found out that people are operating or falsifying Ghana cocoa beans by saying that it's from Ghana. They label the cocoa beans as Ghana cocoa beans. Meanwhile, it's from other neighboring countries. But with this model, with a scan, you'll be able to cluster the cocoa beans from region by region. Because even in Ghana, an earlier version of my paper, we were able to cluster cocoa beans from different regions, the 7 geographical regions in Ghana. So with this one scan, you can get the quantification, you can get the clustering, you can also get discrimination. You discriminate good cocoa bean from other cocoa bean. Now, the model I have developed so far, which is a novel model, which is a combination of two mathematical models, that is spectral interval selection combined with support vector machine. I was able to get a good quantitative model. And again, with mean-centered and support vector machine, I was able to develop what we call the classification model. Now, with these two put together, you can simultaneously also determine a cocoa bean parameter. Now, this research, where is it driving us to? Where is it driving us to? It is driving us to a place where anybody at all, whether he understands this or not, can scan a cocoa bean and get the parameters of interest. This is where we are trying to, and we hope to get there very soon. So why? In conclusion, near spectroscopy and thermometric tools have been used for rapid discrimination and quantitative analysis of cocoa bean. And the accuracy I found so far was 96.8%. This technique will be very useful for breeding and quality control purposes in the cocoa industry. Now, current trend, this is where we growing with the full and take the power of exporting the cocoa to UCC in Tema, because the centralized lab in Tema is that we are trying to build this model so that we have the idea. Let me explain this in brief. So with the miniature scanner, we've gotten the customized organism for the cocoa. So with the miniature scanner, when you look at so it works for
Thank you very much. So, after a lot of technicalities, infrared spectroscopy and all that, let's come back to purity in the of the food water challenges that we face. But first, I will talk a bit about what I do. Being in a university, I'm expected to be one of these blind experts who touch different parts of the system and arrive at separate conclusions. A bigger part of the same. So, because of that, I work on through food commodity trade, but I also work on risks to food security, including climate risks. But today I'm talking about the challenge we face challenges. The problem is that we need to produce sufficient food to feed about 90 But most importantly, arable lands are shrinking. We have a very resource that has to be balanced between production and ecosystems and so food demand is going up. That means we need to increase water use efficiency or water productivity. But the trade on the bridge is at the bottom, the proportion of this proportion of the total components. That will tell you that and this difference is coming from the water soil. Think about our largest employer. biodiversity, they are all intricate. You will be directly or indirectly dealing with these challenges as well. Unfortunately, because we value the products we get from soil, but not the properties of soil itself, we do not treat soil very well. We undervalue it. For example, soil is not the part of any farmer's inventory, but a machine that works on the soil is part of the farmer's inventory, because the soil has no value. As a result, soil is exposed to a number of degradation threats, a number of them, including erosion, loss of fertility, pollution, acidification, and water leak. Now, it has been estimated that to get 1 inch of topsoil formed, you need 500 years. Think about that. 500 years to get just 1 inch of topsoil formed. And current rate of soil loss from agricultural fields is about 100 to 1,000 times the rate of soil formation. That means to get 1 meter thick of topsoil formed, you need the lifespan of a civilization. We need to take care of this precious resource. So the problem is we are eroding an important. So we cannot see the problem as business as usual. We have to educate to everything. In Ghana, a study by the example showed that cost of soil loss alone between 2006 to 2015 was about $4.2 billion. What would that do to our economy? So, in this paper, we had to define what soil security is, and our definition was simple: safeguarding and improving the quality, quantity, and functionality of soil stock from critical and pervasive threats. These are keywords. When we say safeguarding, we mean a deliberate action. We mean proactive action. We need responsive and dynamic governance or institutional frameworks to deal with soil. We talk about quality. Quality here, we are calling this allow the soil to provide specific which is the essential property. And pervasive threats, if you take any scale, local, national, regional, threats that are recurrent and very widespread at that scale. So, the rationale for this paper for soil security is to address 3 cross-cutting challenges. One is to balance increase the ecosystem service supply that. And the last is to ensure that we have a sound agricultural, environmental, and socio-economic use and management of our soil stocks and security. One proposed by and the one proposed by Yasan. McBradley et al. Had 5 dimensions. Our framework because we want to align soil security to focus soil security with these dimensions. Now, questions to ask about just tell us where. Soil and under what conditions. These were a lot of issues for research. On the utilization, we are looking at the purpose and benefits electricity generated from particular uses of particular soils in our jurisdiction, and the capacity of the users to manage that soil. And finally, we are looking at what policy and regulatory capacity of frameworks are there to support soil security of the other dimensions. Now, these dimensions are interlocked and interacting units, the first three dimensions, and they are bound together by the fourth dimension, which is stability, the governance mechanism. So, the interacting spheres or intersections also reveal interactive pressures you have regarding everyone. The scarcity continues. When people think that you have so much soil or fertile lands, they don't care about how they use it. But as the economists will tell us, when a resource is becoming scarce, its value increases and people now begin to take care of the resource. So we have to balance that continuum so that one, accessibility does not affect availability. And the last sphere is the value of natural capital. As said, we value soil. Of the user of the soil that affects the way he or she treats the soil. And so we need to shift our attention from to a situation where it's as a biosystem that is for its own sake. So to conclude and to send and give you some take-home messages, soil security underpins human security. Because soil security is part of all the problems we face. And if you want to conserve other resources, target soil security. If you want to conserve forests, if you want to conserve other things, soil security can help you do that. It is practically impossible to ensure water and food security without securing our soils. We need to recognize and value soil as a biosystem. For its own sake, without it, we cannot be here. People are still researching on Mars because they need two things. They need a soil that can produce food, and they have to be sure that there's water. That soil can produce water. If they do get that, all of us will move to Mars, or some of us. We are lucky to have good soils. That's the scientific approach, where we value soil for its own sake because of the enormous roles that soil plays. In Ghana specifically, soil management and conservation is nobody's business. There is no agency, there is no ministry that is in charge of soil management. Not even the Ministry of Agriculture. For a long time, that ministry doesn't have a soil directorate. It has animals and crops and extension services. So it's important that Parliament helps us to get an agency or an authority in charge of soil. In the US, they built the soil conservation services at the cost of the should not be undermined explicitly or implicitly by policies from the Ministry of Lands. All of them should work together towards conserving the soil. I will urge Parliament to ensure that the executive includes the state of our environment as a specific section in the and that state of the environment should include the state of our land, etc. in this organization address that we give every. And land use and fiscal planning are key. In Ghana, land use is a personal decision. Physical planning is a personal responsibility. People fly land, do whatever they want with it, anywhere, anytime. That will not lead us on the path of sustainability. We need stricter and efficient land use planning and controls so that we can secure our most valuable resource, the soil. And I find a problem with the idea that we can reclaim something so we can destroy it. Because we can restore soil, we can reclaim soil, so we can destroy it and then reclaim it. That is a problem. You can reclaim certain properties, but you cannot reclaim it as a biosystem that existed before the destruction. We are not paying attention to that, and that's why we don't care about what happens in the mining sector and in other impact assessments. But let's look at that as a problem. So to round it up, I will say thank you, and I want you to think about this. A nation that destroys its soils destroys itself. Thank you very much.
Dr. Thank you very much for your presentation. We've listened to talk. Now we need to listen to some sweet voice of Sandra, accompanied by Mr. Sandra. Once again, let's welcome Sandra and Sandra. Thank you very much, Sandra, and Mr. Sai. Ladies and gentlemen, we go to some other special areas, that is President's time. We listen to the presentation of the Director of Trade regarding the process accounts and expectations. Then we listen to the keynote speakers. I've listened to two presentations. All persons, one for presenting, one for party,
Evolved over a number of years. So when it began, it wasn't great.